Hey there, welcome back. This is Professor Rodan with Explorations in Math. This is going to be 10.2, Personal Loans and Simple Interest. So let's get started. So first of all, this section in our study in consumer math is, as a consumer, if we choose to borrow money, there's always going to be a cost to that. And we have to consider that cost before we make that decision. So first of all, borrowing money, there is always a cost. Okay? Even if it's interest-free, the person lending the money is giving up. So the cost, he or she's giving up money that could be earned either through lending it to you or investing it somewhere else. So for the consumer, just thinking about that aspect, there's always a cost for you, or there's a cost to the lender if they use interest-free. Okay, so there's always a cost somewhere. And so what we want to consider is what is the basic cost. So a basic cost would be called simple interest. And simple interest is basically, this is based on the entire amount borrowed for the total period of the loan. Okay. So we'll see how this differs from a more complicated calculation in compound interest. So this is called simple interest. So it's just considering the whole amount that you're borrowing and giving you a rate for the entire time. Okay, so the simple interest formula is basically going to be the interest charge or the total interest charge, I should say. That's going to be calculated through the principal, how much you're borrowing, times the rate. That's the percentage that they're going to calculate every year. Or and times the time. How many years are you going to be, or how many days, or how many months are you going to be borrowing that amount? Okay, so the formula we're going to be using is basically I equals P R T. Okay, interest charge equals the principal times the rate times the amount of time. Okay, so before we do that, we need to know the banker's rule. And the banker's rule basically states that just to keep calculations simple, we know there's different days in various months, but for the banker's rule, we're going to keep it even at 30 days. And of course, the year is going to be 12 months. So if you think about that, how many days are in a year for the banker? there are 30 days times 12. So that's going to equal only 360 days. Okay, that is the banker's rule. So unless the problem actually says use 365, specifically we are going to be using the banker's rule, which is 360 days. Okay, so let's get started calculating simple interest. So determine the simple interest. All right. So here's the amount. We have $12,000. Here's our rate. This is going to be charged every year for 4 years. Okay, and so this rate is based on that entire amount there. And so we have basically I equals PRT. So I is going to equal the interest charged for this loan for that rate for the amount of time is going to be 12,000 times the percentage as a decimal times the year, the amount of years. Okay. So you just want to put this in your calculator, and we have $5,760. Okay. So to borrow $12,000 for 4 years, okay, at the end of the 4 years, you will need to pay back, in addition to the $12,000, another $5,760. So as you can see, it's quite lucrative for the lender. Okay, it's a great business to be in. Now, let's take a look at another one here. This one's slightly different because we have 3 months. Okay, so again, this is going to be 0.2. This is going to be 0.06, not 0.60. And so we have 3 months. Well, this is talking about 3 months out of 12 months in a year. Okay, so 3 out of 12 months. That's what we need to write down for our time, not just 3. Okay, because this is per year. So I is going to equal 2,000 times 0.06 times 3 out of 12, okay, which is basically 1/4 or 0.25, but you can type that in how you want. And so we get $30. Okay. Okay, so we have a strange rate over here, 2 3/8%. So we worked on this in 10.1. So let's first of all rewrite this percent as a decimal. So 2 is the whole number. What is 3/8? So we put 3/8 in our calculator. 3 divided by 8, and we get 2.375. So that's the actual percent. And then, as we talked about in our previous lesson, we're going to drop this percent sign and we're going to move this 2 places to the left by dividing by 100. So this is going to be 0.02375. That's our rate. Okay. In addition to that, we have 44 days, and those are days out of the banker's rule says 360 days in a year. Okay. So this time we're going to do I equals 1,000 times 0.02375 times 44 days out of 360 days. Okay, and just let your calculator do the work. So go ahead and do that and see what you get, and check back in a few seconds to see what the answer is. Okay, so the answer is $2.90. Not very much money because you're only borrowing it for 44 days. So that's basically like a month and a half or so, and very low interest rate. So don't expect too much of a charge there. Okay, versus having it for 4 years with a higher interest rate. Okay. Okay, so now let's do simple interest formula to find a missing term, so a missing item. So in each case, we're going to have one of the 4 items missing. And so for number 4, we have the rate that's missing. Number 5, we have the principal that's missing. And number 6, we have the time that's missing. Okay, so that means we're going to have to do some algebra to solve for the missing variable. Okay, so let's start with number 4. So remember that I equals PRT. And so we're given the interest charge. We're given the principal, $30,000. We're not given the R, and we're given the time as 4 years. Okay, so we want to go ahead and simplify. We want to go ahead and multiply these two right here. So 30,000 times 4 is 120,000. Okay, then we want to divide both sides by 12,000. So we're going to get a decimal, 0.027, and we're just going to round that to, we're going to change this to a percent and make it 2.7%. Okay, that is the rate being charged on this loan. Okay, number 5, we have the interest charge for the loan. We don't have the principal. We have the rate, and we have the time. So we want to go ahead and simplify those two. And that's going to be 0.3 P, and then we divide both sides by 0.3. So 1,500 divided by 0.3 is going to be 5,000. Okay. Let's go to number 6. Number 6, why don't you go ahead and try number 6 and see what you get. And we'll be back in a few seconds to see the work. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and see what you get. Okay, so we have 1,000 as interest charge equals 1,000 principal times the rate of 0.05 times the time, and we're going to simplify those two to get 50 and divide by 50 and we get 20 years. So this is saying if you borrow 1,000 at 5%, how many years will it take you to actually have to be charged the same amount as you borrowed? Okay, so you're gonna have to pay back $2,000 at the end of 20 years. Okay, so it takes a while. Okay, so now let's take a look at a couple of word problems or application problems. And so we have Emma borrowed $3,000 for 6 months from the bank. The interest rate is 7%. How much interest did Emma owe the bank, and how much did Emma repay the bank for the use of the money? Okay, so again, there's a cost of borrowing. So she's borrowing $3,000 only for half of a year. Okay, this interest rate is actually for the whole year, so it's not going to be that much. And so let's calculate the cost of borrowing, which is the I, which is the interest charged. Okay, so in this first question we have I equals 3,000 times 0.07 and then times 6 months out of 12 months, or just half of a year. Okay, so you can definitely use 0.5 if you want, and we get $105. Okay, so half of a year, this is the cost of borrowing, $105. All right, and so how much did she repay? So the second question is going to be right here. So this is A, this is B. So repayment is going to be basically it's going to be the amount borrowed plus the cost of making that transaction, the cost of borrowing. Okay, so basically she borrowed $3,000, she was charged $105, so that's $3,105 total repayment. Okay, let's take a look at number 8. Now number 8, this has to do with those cash advance places or payday loans, and in many states, a lot of these places are illegal because of the high interest rate, and you're going to see why in a minute. Okay, so notice that all the interest rates that we've been doing are pretty reasonable, less than 30%. So let's see someone going to take a cash advance. Okay, so this person has no money, no resources, needs $100 to fix it. That's an emergency for this person. And so with no collateral, this company that's going to give him the $100 is going to use his paycheck. All right, he's got to have proof of income, and that they're going to use his paycheck to 14 days later to not only pay back the $100, but as you can see from the 120, they're charging him $20, all right, to borrow this $100. Okay, so right there we can see that he is being charged 120. He only borrowed 100, so it's pretty clear that they are making $20 off this transaction. Okay, so if $20 is the amount that was charged to this person, how much is the interest rate? All right, let's take a look at that. So we have, they're charging him $20. That's the cost of borrowing the $100. The principal is 100. We don't know the rate, because the rate we're gonna find out per year. Okay. So he only borrowed it for 14 days. This is the problem with this type of transaction. It's such little time for so much money. So if we do the calculation, if 14 days out of 360 days, let's simplify the right side. So 14 divided by 360 times 100, that's going to equal 3.89. And we're going to solve for that R. So we're going to divide both sides by 3.89. Oops. So 20 divided by 3.89 is 5.14. So you may be asking yourself, hey, it's only 5%. No, guys, this is not the rate. This is the decimal. If you remember, the rate is actually a percentage. Okay, so this 5.14 has to be turned into a percentage. It's not at the percentage. And then we can take a look at when we solve for R over here, okay? When we solved for R, that was the decimal rate, which needs to be turned into a percentage. So this question is not complete, although it looks like it. That's because this is so outrageous. That's why it's illegal in many states. So if we turn this into a percentage, take a look at this interest rate, this annual interest rate. Okay? This is why some states have outlawed these types of loans, because of that interest rate. Just for 14 days, being charged $20 is basically, it's like legal robbery. So this is definitely something you want to avoid because of the extremely high interest rate. You're better off using a credit card or going to an actual bank to borrow the money, or to a friend. So that is it for the note. Actually, let's go to, I want to go through one more problem here. So I want to do number 27 from the textbook. And you can put this on the next page if you want. So this is on page 580, okay? And it's a bank personal note. So it says Karen borrowed $3,500 from a bank for 6 months. Her friend, Ms. Harris, was co-signer of Karen's personal note. The bank collected 7.5% simple interest on the date of maturity. So 2 questions. A, how much did Karen pay for the use of money? And B, determine the amount she repaid to the bank on the due date of the note. All right, so let's get the key information down. So the principal amount that she's borrowing, okay, is $3,500, and the amount of time that she's gonna use this money is 6 months, and the rate that the bank is charging her for the life of this loan is 7.5%. Okay, which is basically actually 7.5%, so that's 0.75. Okay, is the rate. Now, we put this into our formula. We're going to get I equals 3,500 times the rate. And remember, this is 6 months out of 12 months in a year, or half a year. Put that all into your calculator, and we're going to get 131.25. This is how much she's being charged, or the cost of borrowing. Okay, so the next question is, what's the total repayment? And that's basically how much she borrowed plus the charge of that borrowing, the cost of borrowing. So that's just 3,631.25. Okay, so she has to make sure she has enough to pay back the loan plus the interest. All right, that's it for 10.2, and we'll see you in the next video.